looking at Catholic higher education right now with Dr. Thomas Dillon. He is president of Thomas Aquinas College in Santa Paula, California, and for 30 years he has worked to advance and sustain Catholic liberal education. Would you explain the difference between the lecture method and the seminar method of education?
Sure, I'm happy to do that because, as you might have read, we don't really use the lecture method at all at Thomas Aquinas College. Mm-hmm. In fact, maybe the first thing to say is that we don't use textbooks. We read, instead of secondary sources, only the primary works of the greatest thinkers in the various fields. For example, we read Plato, Aristotle, Shakespeare, Galileo, Newton, Einstein, de Tocqueville, Adam Smith, Locke, all in the original text. And we assign the reading to the students. They gather together in groups of maybe 15 or 16 around a table. The tutor asks an opening question, and then they put their minds together to try to discover first what the author is saying about the matter at hand. The question posed by the tutor, which is what we call our teachers. We don't call them professors because they're not professing their own views, but are helping the students to understand the thought of minds greater than our own. They try as best they can, first and foremost, to understand what the claim is. And every day, in every class, each student must articulate their views about the text and defend those views when others in the class have questions about what they have to say and so forth. So they're not in competition with one another for grades, but rather it's a kind of cooperative effort to understand the truth. It involves humbly submitting oneself to a larger conversation, being willing to learn at the feet of great masters, and being willing to back down in a conversation if someone has shown you that what you said is not quite right, because what we're all in this for is to understand the truth. Now, what we're aiming at primarily is knowledge. We want the students to come to a clear understanding of the reasons and causes of things, so that what they learn is their own, and they themselves don't need the authority of their teachers. They've grasped it themselves from the inside. So, in a way, I'd like to make the distinction that Socrates makes in the Platonic dialogues between knowledge and opinion. So often, in the lecture system, a student will just write down the notes and write down notes of what the teacher has to say and memorize those things, and we'll have at the end of all that opinion. It might indeed be true opinion, but the student himself doesn't have the reasons and causes. Now, that's not always the case, but that very often happens. It'd be something like my reading a manual or listening to somebody about how to repair the radiator of my car. I might be able to follow the instructions and do what's said, but I don't really know what I'm doing. Whereas a mechanic understands the principles and says, look, we can bypass the system here, we can do this there, because he understands the workings from the inside. He has knowledge, and that's what we're trying to bring our students to as best we can. So that's one fundamental difference. The classes are cooperative efforts where the students put their minds together and try to come to the truth about the matter at hand, and it's by way of working with one another and questioning one another and asking difficult questions that they make a kind of progress.
Now, some would think that that's putting an awful burden on, late teenagers and those in their early 20s.
Well, the one answer to that is talk to those who do it, come and see what we do, because there's a tremendous joy. It's hard. I mean, when they're doing Einstein's text or doing something very difficult in Aristotle's metaphysics, it's not easy, but it's extraordinarily rewarding, especially because over time they come to understand things. They see that there's an order to learning, that certain things are more fundamental than others. They can take up a discipline and say, well, look, here we have a true science, here we have just a series of opinions, and they cultivate judgment. And it's clear when they go through this kind of a program, over time, they're not easily fooled. They're able to judge well the matters they take up. So, yes, it's difficult. Is it a burden? Not really, because they're reading the great thoughts of the best minds, and they're getting someplace. again, it's a beginning, but it's a great beginning.